Maggie J, and these are my stories.
What a terrible day. Groaning in frustration, Jennifer closed the door behind her and leaned against it. So fucked up. She banged her head gently against the wood with each word, but it didn't help to ease the tension. She let her bag, which she was carrying over her shoulder, slide to the floor. She thought for a moment, then also slid down the door to keep her bag company. She let out a long, drawn-out sigh. Today had been one of the worst days. Not that there had been many good days recently, but this one was a lot tougher than the previous ones. She tried to remember the last time she'd had one that wasn't totally shit, or at least vaguely okay, but she couldn't manage it. Her therapist was right. It was time to change jobs. She usually listened to what Dr. Wilk told her. After all, her own approach had brought her to the exact point where it had become necessary to find a therapist. Oh yes, and also a psychiatrist. But this time she hadn't listened to her recommendation, at least not immediately. Otherwise, when the doctor made her a suggestion about what she could change about her behavior to improve her situation, she always tried to implement it immediately. That might sound like she was one of those lemmings who followed the others over the cliff without a thought for the future, but it wasn't like that. She was an independent person with her own feelings and ideas. She certainly tried to convince herself of that, but in the end, she was one of the first lemmings to jump to her death with a smile and a somersault. But she was going to change that now. She could no longer let herself be pushed around like that at work. No, not just at work, in general. If you allow people to treat you like a doormat, they will continue to do so. Dr. Wilk had told her at the last meeting, and she was right. So damn right. She had also let Mark treat her like that time and time again. How could it have come to this? Jennifer kept asking herself this question, even though she knew the answer. She had discussed this with Dr. Wilk in countless sessions, but knowing where a problem came from didn't mean you knew how to solve it. Often you just swam around in the feeling of, yes, yes, I know, and then ran into the knife again and again, even though you actually knew better. But that was over now. She was going to change jobs. Yes, exactly. That's what she would do. Muffin walked quietly along the corridor towards her, meowing again and again to greet her. Hello, Muffin. How was your day? As if in answer, the tabby cat gave a soft growl and began to rub against Jennifer. You should be a cat, she thought as her hand slid through his soft fur. Your only worry is if I don't feed you in time, isn't it? Another meow, which even elicited a slight smile from Jennifer. Muffin was the only thing that cheered her up. She leaned back, closed her eyes, and stroked the cat mechanically. Then she went back over the last few hours and recalled her boss's spiteful smile and biting comments. How she constantly stuck her nose up arrogantly, as if she was something better and always knew more than everyone else. Jennifer hated her deeply. If she saw her on the road, she couldn't guarantee that she would slow down for her. That thought made Jennifer feel good. It was mean, but her boss didn't care if she treated Jennifer unfairly. She was already looking forward to her stupid face when she handed her her quitting notice. But for now, she needed a glass of wine and then a hot shower. Then she would certainly feel better and she could think about her next steps. Muffin stroked her legs and meowed softly as she poured herself a glass of red wine. Jennifer loved it when her cat was so cuddly. It was often the only attention she got. She had broken up with Mark 2 months ago. It hadn't been easy for her, but Dr. Wilk had long been of the opinion that her boyfriend wasn't good for her. Jennifer hadn't wanted to see this for a long time, but when she caught Mark reading her chat histories on her smartphone, she suddenly understood what Dr. Wilk meant. Mark was checking up on her and constantly trying to get every last detail out of her. Jennifer had always seen this as a sign of affection, but the moment Mark so obviously violated her privacy, she finally realized that it wasn't affection. It was control, fueled by jealousy. He didn't want to know what her day had been like because he was interested in her. He asked because he wanted to know who she had been talking to, who she had been seeing. For 2 years, he had talked her out of going to parties with her friends if he couldn't be there. She was no longer allowed to go to her theater class, and she also had to give up her reading group. Of course, he hadn't directly forbidden her to go, but he had talked her into it for so long and badmouthed the other participants in her leisure activities that she eventually lost the desire to go herself. Jennifer only realized how much she was under his thumb when she broke up with Mark. It had been difficult for her, but she hadn't fallen into the hole she had feared. Instead, she felt relieved, as if she had been able to breathe freely again for a long time. It was a wonderful feeling. Mark hadn't been so easily satisfied with Jennifer wanting no more contact, but after she had blocked him everywhere, he seemed to have understood. She took a big sip of the wine and let out a contented sigh. If she had managed to get away from Mark, then she would also manage to get away from the job that was making her so unhappy. After putting Muffin's dinner out, she went into the bathroom. She turned on the shower and let out a satisfied hum as the hot water hit her body. She smiled. It was a great feeling to be in charge of your own life. As she stepped out of the shower and reached for a towel, she paused in her movement. Were those footsteps in the hallway? No, it couldn't be. She had locked the front door, as she always did when she came home. She had removed the key after locking it and then locked it from the inside. No, she hadn't. She had been far too caught up in her thoughts. A shiver ran down her spine. But just as quickly as it had come, she laughed at her crazy thoughts. So what? Then maybe she hadn't locked the door, but the door couldn't be opened from the outside, and you also needed a key for the front door to the apartment complex. She had just seen too many scary movies, and now her mind was playing tricks on her. She dried herself off and put on a bathrobe. She would treat herself to a second glass of wine. That should be possible today. She went into the kitchen, then saw the blood and let out a scream. It took her mind a moment to realize what she was looking at. Muffin was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Muffin? Jennifer rushed towards him, dropping the wine glass, which shattered with a loud clink, but she didn't even notice. She thought he was dead, but his chest was slowly rising and falling. His tail whipped restlessly through the air. He looked at her with a pained expression. Tears welled up in Jennifer's eyes. No, oh please don't. Whimpering, she knelt beside him and stroked his blood-stained fur. This couldn't be happening. What was going on? What was she supposed to do? Muffin tried to meow, but the blood seeping from his slit throat prevented him from doing so. Instead, he just looked at his owner and tried to catch his breath, bubbling. Could she take him to the vet? Would he be able to do anything? But how could she do that? She didn't have a car. She was so caught up in her thoughts that she didn't even ask herself who had done it. She was still sitting on the floor, trembling and shaking, when the door to the pantry slowly opened. But when she realized who had entered, it was already too late. Much too late. Mark smiled at her, holding the knife that had cut Muffin's throat. But it wasn't the warm and heartfelt smile she had fallen in love with. No, he looked at her like a predator at its prey. Jennifer froze. Please don't, she whispered, but she already knew it was too late. The worries about her job had suddenly disappeared.
If you like what you heard, subscribe to my channel for a new story every week.